Hi, I'm Amy Shannon from Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast, where stories speak, voices matter, and words come alive. If you are following this on Spotify, please follow the podcast. Um, Now, the interviewees uh, have the option of having an audio only podcast session or a video podcast session. This is a video podcast session, and I hope that you enjoy it. It will also be shown on YouTube. So if you are watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. Thank you.
Jan Notzon,
Hold on.
author of 7 novels.
Thank you.
Now, actually,
Good evening, listeners. I'm Amy Shannon, and welcome to Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast. Conversations, revelations, inspirations behind the book. You never know where the conversation will lead us, so let's find out. Tonight we have a guest with us, so thank you for joining us. Will you please introduce yourself?
hi, I'm Jan Notzon, author of now 8 novels, the last of which will be released on the 23rd of this very month.
Well, that is wonderful. So, what got you started with writing?
Oh, gosh. Well, I was an actor in a former life. I think I've told you that. And I don't know, something just something I had gone to the University of South Carolina to get my MFA, and something that one young girl, a freshman actually, I was a graduate student, said, I want you to write for me and this other gal a docudrama. And I thought, well, if I'm going to write something for this young lady, what would I write? And so I wrote a 1-act play. It wasn't a docudrama. What did she call it? A psych drama? I don't know. I can't remember what she called it. But anyway, it eventually found its way into a full-length play, and then into my novel Song for the Forsaken.
That was a great novel. Yes.
Thank you.
I've read all your works, so I know it's good.
Thank you.
You write very well. And when since you were an actor, when you are writing or going over after you've written, do you like picture that like as if you were one of the characters? Or is that like the acting is like no more, gone, whatever?
No, I mean, my novels are full of dialogue and conflict. That's the basis of most drama, is conflict. So yeah, no, the actor in me will you can take the actor off the stage, but you can't take the stage out of the actor.
Yeah, and I do this. I like dialogue driven and character driven stories. That's kind of how I write myself. So I really I don't know, yours are just something that I was drawn to from the beginning, so I knew I had to just keep reading your stuff. It's remarkable. And like you said, you have a new one coming out. And by the time this airs, it'll already be out there. Heir of the West Wind. Do you want to talk a little bit about that one?
Sure. It is kind of a continuation. I started writing historical fiction with Suffer Not the Mole People, about my father's family's emigration from Poland. And then I guess I started reading Lone Star by, and I can't remember the author's name, but it was a long last name, very German. But it was about the history of Texas. And, my father's family came directly from Poland to Texas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and apparently their priest had made a voyage to Texas and proselytizing, I assume,
Yeah.
and came back with the news that Texas at that time was basically giving land away because they wanted people to populate it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so first, my great great grandfather's sister came
Hmm.
in 1852, and then my great great grandfather and his family came in 1867, 1866, 67, right in there. And then I went on to write a historical fiction novel about the founding of the first the Mexican Republic, and then a little bit later in the 19th century, the Texas Republic. And I used one of the characters, not the one that I identified with, but his older brother, coming with, his mother met this guy where the family was working the Catula Ranch in Texas, which is fairly famous, and fell in love with his mother. Fell in love with she had lost her husband on the voyage over,
Oh.
and then yeah, it was a epidemic of I can't remember what the disease was, but anyway. So I wrote that, and the narrator for the Texas part is this great great uncle of mine.
Hmm.
And once that was done, it the people who read it said it ended with uh, his stepfather dying,
Uh-huh.
and the narrative is the tears he shed were the foundation of his oath to continue the ranch.
Hmm.
And essentially, his stepfather left the ranch to him rather than to his biological son.
Oh.
But the judge wouldn't accept that. And so it stayed in the name of the biological son. And that is what happens. It's really about, how do you hang on to humanity when you've been savaged and brutalized for years and years?
Right.
Because he is falsely convicted of assault and sent to Huntsville Penitentiary, which even now is known for its rather unhumanitarian conditions. But gosh, in the 19th century was probably incredibly brutal.
Probably. Yeah.
And so, he has this, his stepfather's adoptive sister, Luz Maria,
Mhm.
just adopts him as her child. So he has two mothers, his own mother and Luz Maria. And Luz Maria has left a diary that he swears, once he has passed away, he swears he is never going to look at, but it keeps drawing him and keeps drawing him. And it's about the battle between keeping your cynicism, your protective armor of cynicism, and letting it go.
Yeah. And that happens in real life too. We have that,
Oh, yes, it does.
Yeah, I mean, it's just overcoming something. You can either just sit back and hate the world, or you can try to forgive it and move forward.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And sometimes that's really hard.
Oh, yes, it's very hard.
Yeah.
And I think that even with whatever, happens to people, that's something that keeps them going, especially when you think about, like you were talking about how your family immigrated to Texas. Early of mine, they immigrated, and I don't know how they ended up in a small town in upstate New York. But I live in upstate New York, but I don't know what drew them to this one area, but they were able to, they thrived. They opened their own carriage repair company.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I've been doing for a couple of years writing nonfiction local history, but I've also been doing my own family's history,
Mhm.
and I find it so interesting. I have my dad's cousin. Well, he's my second cousin, but he always calls me cousin. um, he was a journalist and historian for a local county,
Mhm.
and he was also keeping all the stuff of that side of the family. So he
Wow.
passed the torch to me.
Treasure trove.
It was amazing. Yeah. I mean, I was just, I mean, he still like, I have a whole room full. I'll send you more stuff. But it's just kind of like the last time I had talked to him was, I was a kid and I wanted to be a journalist when I grew up because I wanted to be a writer. And I was thinking, oh, to be a writer and make money, you have to be a journalist. That was my thinking. So I interviewed him over the telephone for a school project. um, and then a couple of years ago, before my grandmother passed, he interviewed her. And about her childhood, and he wanted to learn more about his mother and his aunts and uncles. And he recorded it. And after my grandmother passed, excuse me, she was 101 when she passed, but
Wow.
she had fallen, and that's the only reason she passed at that time. But um, I asked him if he had a copy of it. I just kind of reached out and said, I'd love to hear it. It took me a year to listen to it. I tried for like 3 seconds and I'm like, nope, I'll put it away. I'll listen to it later. And then we just kind of connected because we realized we have so much in common about our love for history and family history and things like that. So he passed his torch to me.
Well,
And
I'm curious, where did your family emigrate from?
um, let's see, my father's side, it was England and Germany.
Okay.
And my mother's side was, well, when I say England, it's kind of like an insult if I say Northern Ireland.
Mm.
I still don't understand that. So, yeah, if you're from Northern Ireland, you're not Irish, you're English, of course,
Right.
according to whatever my family said. So, uh, our last name is Shannon, but and my mother's side, some were from Germany and others were from Scotland. And they
Okay.
came over. It was just my great grandfather. He helped his father build, like they had 14 children. Not all of them lived to adulthood, but the ones that did, the men, they worked the carriage company. They built carriages and they fixed them and all that stuff. And then, of course, then the motor car came around, so
Yeah,
they switched gears, but literally
to
they
speak.
switched gears. And my grandfather became, he was a very successful farmer. And then he moved from Guilderland to Burnt Hills, and he owned a lot of land. And he was the guy that if his neighbors were suffering, he would, like during the Depression, he would go around to his neighbors and give them food because
Oh,
he had two kinds of crops for selling and crops for them to eat and, store. Uh,
right.
but if his neighbors needed food or they needed coal, he was out there handing things out. Then years later, because my grandmother said that she never, I asked her if, what the Depression was like for her. And she said, then they had everything they needed. So they didn't really, it didn't seem to affect them. They just helped their neighbors the best that they could. So, We grew up with kind, loving people. So
Mhm.
I like that. More people should be that way.
Yeah, boy.
They say it's simpler times, but not really. I think that, they just worked harder.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've heard of other stories like that. My next door neighbors were elderly. They passed, unfortunately, but uh, he said, they kind of grew up ne- together, and he said that her mother never turned down anyone, looking for a meal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And unfortunately, there are still kind people out there. And I believe that. I know I try to be as kind as possible. Um, but there are those, it's sometimes it's hard to be that way,
yeah.
when you're face to face with, something that's ready just to either literally or physically just pop you right in the face. So, um, I've been there twice.
Well, I think nowadays people uh, tend to think, oh, the government will take care of them, and you didn't have that during the Depression.
Yeah, you had to take care of yourself, and if
And
yeah,
your community.
exactly. And I think that the community is one thing that is really important to feel like you're part of something, but also as a human, like for me to have a purpose.
Mhm.
I have more than one, and I know one of them is to help authors and do whatever I can for them.
And boy, do you.
I do my best, and that's kind of why I started this podcast too, just to help people get their voice out,
Mhm.
so they can talk about it. And um, not everybody picks up a book and knows what, you know, they can see what the author put into it. They go on a journey, and that's what books should do for you.
Mhm.
When I read a book, when I read your book, when I read a few other authors' books, there's certain ones that always stand out, and those are the authors that keep coming back to me, having me read their work. There's over 500 that do that now.
Oh,
Every time they have a new book, they'll get it, and they've been asking me for more authors. So, but I love it,
that's good.
and I can tell when I'm reading their work if it's, if they're passionate about what they do. There are some books that I've read that, sure, they're technically correct, grammatically correct, punctuation's all there, but it reads more like a tech manual than it does an actual story.
Mhm.
And then I'm thinking maybe that person shouldn't be writing fiction. Maybe they should be writing something else.
Yeah.
The writing's good. You got to build your characters. So what when you wrote your first book, and then now this is number 8, correct?
Correct.
Do you ever go back and look at what you've written before?
Well, I happen to be a member of the Charlotte Writers Club,
Mhm.
and we have an open mic night at a coffee shop. And so I read my work out loud to people.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Being an actor, people are like, wow, how do you do that? Well, it's just
It's just who you
comes,
are.
it's just, uh, being on stage and reading or whatever is like breathing for me.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. That's what like writing is for me. Even if I'm not writing a story or doing research on something, just me thinking, writing something down is, even if it's just my thoughts or something,
Mhm.
it just kind of it helps, because sometimes you only want to write it, and then you don't want anyone ever to see it. And sometimes you have to be very careful, because my father has, he's still around, but he has end stage dementia.
Uh,
And I went through a lot of his papers, boxes, to see
yeah.
if there's important stuff. And I found a folder of stuff that he wrote. So this past July, I republished one of my books that I wrote during my dad's PT sessions. And then I put his work that I found in it as well.
Mm.
And that was kind of like an homage to my father, but now he doesn't know how to read anymore. So, but the first book, once I gave it to him, it was paperback. So every time we went out, he would fold it in half and put it in his back pocket. So he always had something to read. He loved it. So that's why I was like, okay, I got to share his work. But in some of the papers, I found stuff and I'm like, oh, I wish I didn't read that. It's like a letter to his father, and how he really felt about his father, and he didn't have a great relationship with him. But I knew that, but after reading it, I'm like, I wish I did not read this. Some things I don't want to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it probably wasn't meant for anyone to read but himself, to just get it on paper. And he was a poet, and he loved Robert Burns, and he got me loving Robert Burns now. And I have his copy of the Robert Burns book that I had bought him. And then I got it back when he couldn't read, because he started throwing his books at the nurses. So that's when I knew, hey, he couldn't read anymore. He tried to fake it for a long time. But it was, it's not easy. I don't know who that man is anymore. I lost my dad a long time ago, but
Yeah.
I hold on to that because we shared love of books and the love of vinyl. So many times I've been put Presley on the turntable so I can kind of feel my dad with me. He could sing like Elvis, like you wouldn't believe.
Oh.
But here I am going, how he would raise his voice and then lower it. And my dad could do that. And I was like in awe. So with your work, do you have, like, this is going to sound stupid, like family that like supports you with your writing, your acting? Do you have a support system? Do you have people that like you and they read your book?
In my family, not my immediate family. We were not very supportive. 5 children. I was the youngest.
I was the oldest of 5.
Oh, really? Okay. And we were just pretty mean to each other, frankly.
Oh.
That's in my very first novel, which is highly autobiographical, but I'll ask you not to tell the surviving brother and sister I have.
Yeah. No, that's your secret, safe with people who are listening and me.
Yeah. But no, I don't think any of them have read. Well, my eldest brother read my first novel because, I stupidly mentioned to a cousin that I was going to be in Austin, Texas at Book People reading from that particular novel. And my brother, and he would not come to the reading. And I think it's because, what he read about himself. And I was so, oh my gosh, what did I do?
He's probably like, that is me.
But we got to be friends. Was I close to the 2 who have already passed? People say you and Peggy were close, and I felt for her when she got the cancer diagnosis, and really pretty poor prognosis. But You know, I don't know what it says about me, but the thing I have loved the most in my life was my dog, Alex.
Oh,
Man, I love
but
that dog.
there's there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, honestly, I've been in the last few years because of a brain injury I had 20 years ago. I had to start using a walker, and now I use a wheelchair most of the time.
Oh, no.
And I have a sister who always likes the attention on her, and we used to be close, but now that but as soon as I was using the walker, it was like, oh, she'll get all the attention because my sister is the kind of person that likes to go on Facebook and say, oh, what a bad day, and then not put anything else and wait for people to ask her what's wrong, you
Okay.
know, or I did this, and so she could get sympathy or whatever. And
Mm.
ooh, I don't want sympathy. My boys push me even on days I just feel like not getting out of bed. I still get out of bed and go. And when I look back at my relationship that I had with her, I was like, it was always kind of like one sided. And then I miss my niece, my niece and my two nieces and my nephew. But her baby, um, well, she's 10 now, but
Mm.
I miss her
Mm. I'm
because the
sure.
first couple years of her life, I took care of her mainly because her mother was in and out of the hospital.
Oh,
And she used to come over, and I would homeschool my kids, my boys, when they were in high school. And she would sit there at the table and color or eat Cheerios or whatever. So we called her the principal. I'm like, you need a principal. I was the teacher, they were the students. But that's what happens sometimes with family. I know I have a sister that we never got along, not growing up, not since the day she was born. She was like the one that had to be perfect,
oh,
and she had to be the most beautiful and all that kind of stuff. And now she's the only person I actually give updates to about my dad.
uh,
And if she goes to see him, she'll let me know what's going on because I have to make all the decisions on my father's behalf.
uh,
And so she checks in with me, and then I get, uh, sometimes I just get phone calls all the time. Oh, yeah, he fell because he forgot he can't walk. So
yeah.
it's like they expected him to pass last year.
Mm.
Just when they think he's going to, then he doesn't.
Mm.
They told me he wouldn't live to see his next birthday, which is next month, and he's still holding on. So I don't, but it's whoever's in that. It's not my dad anymore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I do because I miss the time we didn't have when I was growing up because I wasn't very close to him, but I wanted to be. And he
Mm.
was distant and angry all the time. And he was a totally different man because he had a TBI and he had no idea what he had.
Mm.
When he was a child, he was run over by a car
Oh.
3 times, ran over, backed over, ran over again. He almost died. He literally had a traumatic brain injury, but um, once he came out of the coma, he was almost back. My grandmother said he was almost back to normal. He acted like he was angry a lot, but it was because he couldn't remember stuff. He had lost a lot of his short-term memory.
Uh,
And we knew that as he got older, and once he realized what was wrong with him, it took him, he wanted to figure out what was wrong. So he went and got a degree, associate's degree in psychology, just so he would figure out what was wrong with him. I mean, that's the kind of person he was. He was very intelligent, socially awkward. He told bad jokes, but I got them.
well, that's interesting because I majored in psychology and it was to find out what was wrong with me.
Yeah, I found a lot of his notes, and he wrote everything down because so he could remember. And
Mm.
I do that now because my memory goes in and out. I remember 20 years ago what I was doing, but what I did yesterday, I couldn't tell you.
Oh boy.
I read probably,
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
but yeah, so I carry my dad with me, and
Mhm.
he used to call me his memory.
Mm.
Uh, During COVID, the doctors had a fit because my dad insisted on me being in the same room with
Mm.
him. And they're like, why? Because you got to wear your mask and all these protocols. And my dad's like, because she's my memory. And then they didn't say anything else. They didn't give him a hard time any other time. Most of the time you couldn't go in there. But he made sure that I was sitting right next to him so he could understand.
Mhm.
But, I think too with, you know, sometimes all you need is support from an animal.
Mm.
I was thinking about that. I had a bad day the other day, and my only grandchildren have fur. um, my son Robert and his husband, they have a dog. He's a cockapoo. His name is Hyper, and Robert asked me if he could bring him over on Saturday, and it just made my day.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm like, come to grandma, and he's all happy and loving. I have two cats, and we have a turtle, and we got fish, and we've
I
got,
see one of your cats back
oh
there.
yes, that is Flash, that he's my baby.
Uh,
He's my support animal. He actually listens to me when I talk to him. And I also have a turtle. She's her name is Stanley, but she's aquatic. But when I talk to her, she listens. She knows her name.
wow.
The only time she ever got mad at me, I've they told me she would stop growing when she's 8. She's 9 now.
Mhm.
I got her when she was just a little baby, and um, she just remembered. She knows her name. So when we found out, because we were told she was male, because you can't just lift up her tail. That's not how you tell. It's based on their feet. So my son Robert's like, Stanley's a male or a female. I'm like, oh well, I can't change her name because she knows her name. And so my son Lewis is like, well, what does she identify as? I'm like, a submarine, because she just kind of floats around. But she only got mad at me once. I fed her, and one of her little pellets tapped her on the head, and she wouldn't look at me all day.
Oh, really?
I'm
Wow.
like, what? I'm so sorry. But yeah, that's my baby Flash.
Yeah.
He's a good boy. But I really enjoyed talking with you, and
Same here.
I think it's great, and I like when we work together or just email back and forth. I think I just love that, and I really I cherish that. Thank you so much.
I do too.
And anytime, anytime you need me, you can just contact me. And I'll just wrap up now. Thank you for being on the show, and thank you, audience, for listening. If you wish to be a guest on the show, go to amysbookshelfreviews.com/podcast and schedule your pre-recording. Don't forget, if you wish to comment on this show or others, comments are available, and yes, I will read them. Please follow the podcast on Spotify. I'm Amy Shannon. Be safe, be well, and always be kind. Thank you for watching this video podcast. Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast is a takeoff of Amy's Bookshelf Reviews website, and which does reviews and also author promotions. You can go to amysbookshelfreviews.com for more information. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe, follow, and keep listening. Thank you.